In January of 2023, on what started as just a normal workday, my social media feeds and email inbox suddenly started to light up with urgent news. A senator from Millard, who I'd never heard of previously, introduced two bills attacking transgender kids. One was a ban on gender-affirming healthcare, and the other would require all K through 12 kids to use the bathroom congruent with their sex at birth and only play on sports teams the same. As the parents of trans kids, my husband Nathan and I kind of at first panicked and felt sort of hopeless. And then we scrambled around online to try to find out who is assembling to fight these bills. We joined a Zoom call and signed up for all the email lists. We both reached out to other parents of trans kids that we know, and we constructed emails and social media posts to urge our networks to take action. At the time, I considered myself a pretty politically active person. I followed issues in the news, I posted about them on social media. I knew how to email and call my senators, but actually I rarely did because I live in Midtown and they're always on my side anyway. By that point, I was also pretty good at petition signing and at rally attendance. I could hold a sign and march and chant with the best of them. What I didn't know then was how to testify in a committee hearing at the unicameral, but I learned how to do that. How to catch a senator in the hall to talk to them, or how to request they come off the floor to talk to me, even if they're not my senator. But I learned how to do that. I had never even sat in the gallery to watch floor debate. I wasn't a fourth grader in Nebraska, so I didn't go on a field trip there. But now I've done that dozens of times. I didn't grow up here, and I didn't understand much about our unique Nebraska unicameral system and how the legislative process works. But I know a little bit more about that now than I probably ever wanted to. When Erin from the Women's Fund offered to help parents of trans kids talk to senators, I reluctantly showed up to do that, even though it was extremely intimidating. And after I talked to my first one, I was encouraged. She was very kind and sympathetic, and she asked questions. As a mom, I can't imagine what it's like to go through this, she said. Thank you. I learned so much. This was very helpful. And I walked away feeling like, maybe I did it. They're going to defeat this bill. At that point, 3 women approached me, who I didn't know, and asked me what bill I had just been talking to the senator about. I was a little suspicious. I didn't know who these people were. And I was like, 574? And they said, in support or against? And again, hesitantly, I said, against? And they said, oh, good, us too. I have a trans son. And we chatted a bit about our kids and this horrible bill and how we did not know what the heck we were doing there in the Capitol. And this is kind of the origin story of Rainbow Parents. Just a bunch of moms meeting each other one by one while wandering around cluelessly in the rotunda. Some of us hugged and cried together during the soul-crushing passage of 574 and vowed to keep fighting. What we had done was not enough. After that, 10 of us moms ended up getting more connected. We formed a group chat where we shared information and activism and social events. Some took their husbands and kids to meet senators during the interim in the hopes of defeating 574 that was held over for the next session. My friend Maureen, and fellow board member here, took her retired military and law enforcement father to talk with his senator about his trans granddaughter. No one really told us how. No one really told them how. They just took it upon themselves to do everything they could to stop this bill. Through the next session this past spring, we each got involved as we could in our different ways. We showed up, we sat in the gallery, we continued emailing and meeting and sending postcards and care packages. A group of us were sitting in the gallery on the day of the final debate of 575, and several senators had us in tears as they looked up and addressed us, parents, during their remarks. As one example, Senator Danielle Conrad said, "Let me start by saying to trans Nebraska youth and their families, we see you, we hear you, and we love you. When you ask me what you have asked my colleagues, why on earth did you wake up one day and find yourselves under attack by your government? No one's answered that question, and I'm sorry that you have to bear it year over year." Others used our stories. I literally emailed Megan Hunt from my phone in the gallery to offer an example of how the bill would hurt my trans son, and she used it 10 minutes later in floor debate. Even having to listen to ignorant nonsense about men exposing themselves to little girls in school bathrooms was easier to bear when sitting there with other parents. Then, Senator Merv Reepe said, "Transgender students and their families do not seek attention, but rather accommodation to the life they have been given in this very complicated world. And thank God for his creation and the strength of families and friends who love these transgender students and walk the walk with them every day through every challenge without the heavy hand of government." And that's when we knew that 575 was going to be stopped. He and Senator Brandt both chose not to vote to overcome the filibuster, which killed the bill. When Senator Reepe said later that it was meeting families with trans kids that helped change his mind, he was talking about Maureen and some of our other parents and kids. At an event earlier this summer, Senator Michaela Cavanaugh publicly gave Rainbow Moms credit for helping stop 575, and she created some buzz. She surprised us, and people started wondering, who are the Rainbow Moms? Can we work with the Rainbow Moms? And we were like, we're a group text. So our organically formed group text decided to start to figure out what more we could be. 6 of us who had the ability to make a bigger commitment formed a board and registered our name, Rainbow Parents, talked to a lawyer, and started discussing what our focus should be. There are a lot of other organizations working for LGBTQ rights or offering support, so what would be our distinctive? We decided that we wanted to become for other parents and allies what we needed 2 years ago when we were each individually bumbling around and trying to figure out what we were doing. We wanted to teach people how to advocate for queer kids. Because what we have found is that many people who love and worry about the queer kids in their lives know less about the political process than some of us did. Some of them aren't registered to vote or know who their senator is. And we want to make it easier and less intimidating to get engaged, especially for parents who might be going through hard times in other ways. We're in the process of forming a 501c4 because we want to be able to endorse candidates and maybe even eventually give money. But right now, we're sending out a weekly action email to more than 100 subscribers. We're in our 4th week that will come up today. The emails give a bit of education and then give a specific concrete action step to do yourself or to urge your friends and neighbors to do. We're going to begin doing candidate spotlights, and we'll highlight events and volunteer opportunities. After the election, we will help host Legislature 101 sessions and organize some days to go to the Capitol together to make that less intimidating for folks. So right now, we have a website, Facebook and Instagram, with several hundred followers each. There are cards with QR codes on all the tables for you to help you find us. Please pass the word. This is no secret organization, and you don't have to be a parent to be involved with Rainbow Parents. If you care about queer kids in our state, please join us. If there's nothing else you remember from Rainbow Parents' experience, I hope it is that all of our families' stories matter. All of our kids matter. And if a bunch of regular, busy moms with only a passion for protecting our kids can panic and cluelessly jump into action and still make some kind of a difference, so can you.
Amen. I want to invite you to hear this scripture from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 22. Listen with me for a word or phrase that stands out to you, that finds a place in you. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you tithe dill, mint, and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. It is these that you ought to have practiced without neglecting the others. want to invite you to hear it a second time. Listen for the word or phrase and be in tune with how you feel, what feeling or emotion. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you tithe mint, dill, and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. It is these you ought to have practiced, without neglecting the others. I want to invite you into a piece of the law, if you will, from the text, the weightier matters of the law. And while I was in Ireland on sabbatical, in the evening I'd look online and be like, what is happening? And at one point there were these news stories about the legislature in Louisiana requiring the school districts to post the 10 Commandments. And I thought we were done with this, because I remember when I was starting seminary, there was like a flurry of lawsuits about monuments with the 10 Commandments. The biggest of which, of course, I think might have been outside of the Texas state capitol. I have a cute picture with it. And but there are other places too. The Eagles Club got real into donating them. And we'll get back to the monuments. Also, there had been a law like this in Kentucky that was struck down in 1980, but here we are again. And the law, thanks to Gab's help, I found it, because they do know about going and finding their way through the unicameral and the legislature and all of this business. And it says very exact what should be posted on the poster. It also says the size of the poster. It should add like, thou shalt make a 11 by 14 inch poster. Thou shalt use a very legible font. Thou shalt frame it, optional. Thou shalt be more loved if thy frames it. Anyway, there's a required paragraph with the 10 Commandments to be posted, which kind of goes on about how this copy of the 10 Commandments was part of an American textbook published in 1688, which, you know, it's really good to reuse textbooks from like the last 300 years. It really saves our education system a lot of money. And so the paragraph goes on at length about how many textbooks this was used in, starting in 1688, and then it was used by a predominant professor and educator, William McGuffey, in his McGuffey's Readers, that was published in the early 1800s, and you can still buy it today. And I was like, do the McGuffey Readers have a lobbyist? That's not the end of the paragraph. The paragraph ends after some more history, which includes a little sentence about dictionary use, and that this was taken out in 1975, which I think is when everything went wrong, clearly. And so the 10 Commandments that are required in schools, also, the bill is very clear, or kind of clear, that thou shall, it's not their intention to create an unfunded mandate. And then there's supposed to be a donor that the State Board of Education will secure. And I just would like to know who that donor is, because like NASCAR, everything should have a patch. It should be owned. If it's the Heritage Foundation, we should get to know. Now, the 10 Commandments that they want posted are, I am the Lord thy God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make thyself any graven images. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord in vain. Remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord hath giveneth thee. Thou, because like also the primer should include like, oh, this is how old-timey folks spoke. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, which might be hard when a bright second grader says, what's adultery? And you don't have any research-based sex education content that you're allowed to talk about. Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, and then thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his cattle, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Whew. Which is clear that this document is largely written to men. And so I think unless you're a he, they, a he, him, you just, it doesn't apply to you. It doesn't apply. So everyone else just go home. All the he's stay for instruction. This bill also encourages folks to post, but does not require, the Mayflower Compact from 1620, the Northwest Ordinance of 1780, which is not about the Pacific Northwest. No, it's about Minnesota and that like Northwest area where Allison is. And so like how that would be distributed. And if you look in that document, which I did, you can find very specific language about who counts as a person. And who counts as a person is a free male of age. And you have to have like 2,000 or 5,000. I should have written it down before you get to count and move to the next phase of being a territory and then a state. And it says in there, which seems to be very important to the people who crafted this bill, religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind. Schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged. That's what it says in this document about how to settle this Northwest territory in 1787. It's curious to me that we're like talking about the Ten Commandments, but it probably shouldn't be. These posters, I guess, if we really want to talk about the Ten Commandments, we can talk about the Ten Commandments. The thing is, all of these posters, just like all of the monuments, leave out the very beginning of the Ten Commandments, which very explicitly say, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of slavery in the land of Egypt. The commandments, which could also be more accurately translated to statements or word, the 10 words, the 10 statements, they follow the people leaving enslavement, leaving an economic system of oppression and dehumanization, and a space of longing for liberty after being in the wilderness. The Ten Commandments are actually delivered in this sort of grand style, right? It's probably Charlton Heston can't even get close to what we're talking about in the Hebrew Bible. Oh, and by the way, every different translation, even before Jesus was born, even before the BC AD changeover, there's different numbering systems for the Ten Commandments. The one that this document has chosen is very Protestant from the King James English itself. Even the Hebrew scholars before Jesus disagreed on how to outline these 10 statements. They had different ways of doing it. The Hebrew people receive these 10 words in the midst of the wilderness. There is this moment of thunder and storm and lightning. They are gathered around all together. And their response to this receiving of 10 commandments is not like, oh, that's a great font. Their response is fear. It is shock and awe and a longing for how to participate in this life. It is a moment that doesn't just stop with this delivery of 10 commandments, which the commentators, especially in the Jewish Study Bible, are quick to remind us that these 10 commandments don't come with a list of 10 punishments. That they're supposed to be more carrot than stick, which I don't know. If you read the rest of the Bible, it's hard to say that. You can lean into it, though. It does give you the option of saying it. The difference also between this moment for the Hebrew people and their neighbors, there are sophisticated ancient neighbors who have sophisticated law codes. They have just left one in Egypt, frankly. They're the only law code that is named by God, that is a divine law code. The other law codes that are maybe famous and also in textbooks, the kings and the legislatures and the people with power may likely say they are connected to divinity. They may say they are inspired by divinity, but there is no sense that they are divinely created in the way that the Hebrew people do this. And so there is this sense that you lean into this call, these commandments, by a sense of love and passion and commitment and awe. The first 5 are about what it means to be in relationship with the divine, and the second 5 are about what it means to be in relationship with your community. And to be honest, they're listed in Exodus, and they are listed again in a different way in Deuteronomy. This translation is maybe not the best translation. But I suspect the goal here isn't to talk about biblical literacy, or even maybe the intention behind these commandments. See, these commandments, they're the foundation of this relationship that calls you into a connection with God, a commitment to God. And while some folks might take this not having other gods or not having other idols to mean specifically other religions, I think it's worth exploring as all the things that we put between ourselves and what is loving. Our love of power, our love of wealth, our love of control, our love of stuff. It names again and again the need for Sabbath, this requirement for Sabbath. They have just left an economy that does not offer Sabbath, and the Sabbath, this is a very shortened version of the Sabbath. The Bible gives you, in each translation, a very lengthy understanding. Everybody gets a rest. Everybody gets a rest on the Sabbath. The Sabbath is essential. And in the version in Deuteronomy, which would have been compiled later, they reiterate, because you were enslaved, because we were dehumanized, because we were not valued and given an abundant life, we honor that, we give that, we weave that into our very understanding of God. The second part is about how you relate to others. Thou shalt not kill should actually probably be translated, thou shalt not murder. Thou shalt not commit adultery, steal, bear false witness, covet, all these things. And if they really want to talk about what these things mean, Like, let's talk about what it means. Because poverty may not sound like a gun or cut like a knife, but it kills. Our economic systems, our systems of injustice, our systems that rain down violence, particularly on black and brown bodies, our systems that set up environmental injustice, particularly on the most marginalized folks among us, are not an accident. Thou shalt not steal. Maybe they think it will protect their stuff from someone. But maybe it also means the wages and the labor and the time and the well-being and the wealth of whole continents and whole people. These commandments mean so much more than a poster or a monument can give it credit. I don't think anybody's going to walk by this poster and be like, oh, I was thinking about adultery, and now I've changed my mind. I was pondering something real serious, and that commandment just did it for me. Maybe it's really about how people can't just do what they used to be able to just do without anyone asking any questions or saying no. We, as people of faith, are called to this faith that invites us to look into our history and to look into our tradition with a lens of Jesus. Jesus, who began his ministry by saying, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. I'm here to proclaim good news to the poor, to proclaim recovery and release, to set the oppressed at liberty." And so we are invited to look in our tradition and in our culture and to see what brings that forward. How it might inspire us, how it might give us courage to do something different. Jesus looked at the political, religious establishment of his day, and they were the only people that he had harsh words for. He looked at them and said, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you tithe mint and dill and cumin, but have neglected the weightier matters of law, justice, mercy, and faith. These ought to have been practiced without neglecting the others. You blind guides, you strain out a gnat to swallow a camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you clean the outside of the cup and of the plate, but are on the inside are full of greed and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisees, first clean the inside of the cup, so that the outside may become clean." This is the work of our faith. This is the work that Jesus was about, day in and day out, the actual way that everybody receives abundance, is invited into abundance, and goes to bed safe, well, fed, and warm. May it be so. Amen.